Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Law. This is your legal light and your health law. A reverend minister who's been doing the job of a chaplain or preaching in the St. Monica's Training College is in the storm. Why? For doing what has become known as the holy kiss, kissing 3 girls in the public as his way of showing them appreciation for having distinguished themselves in whatever it is that they have been doing. To the surprise of women lawyers, including FIDA, the fact that the students or student teachers in that assembly were heard shouting, laughing, and having fun at that incident suggests there is a deeper thing that we need to look at. What is sexual harassment? How do you identify it? How do you avoid it? And what are the punishments for sexual harassment? That's what we focus on this afternoon with 2 lawyers from FIDA. Now, take a look at this.
Reverend Father Obin Labi is seen in a viral video which has received wild public condemnation, casing students after a Sunday Mass service. The incident is said to have occurred after Sunday Mass service to usher in new SRC executives of the school. The peace case from Father Labi was to appreciate and honor students who are members of the chaplaincy committee for distinguishing themselves in the college. Authorities of St. Monica's College of Education say the man, who has been working in the school for the last 5 years as chaplain and lawyer, is relieved of his post until further notice. Venerable Dr. Ochre Kranche is acting principal of the college.
Our attention as a college was drawn to a video which has gone viral. It's gone far. Many of our people outside the country have tried to reach us, trying to find out what is happening. And they are on various social media platforms involving the chaplain of our school, casing some students whilst officiating the Mass on Sunday. The Anglican Church, Internal Province of Ghana, has issued a statement this morning on the matter, expressing how saddened the entire Anglican Communion has been as far as the matter is concerned, and also providing a way forward as far as investigation and our support service to our students. The said Reverend Father, by the directive of the church, in fact, he is not a full staff. He was seconded to be with us, and it's the bishop who takes decision on him. And the bishop has directed that he should be relieved of all his clerical and pastoral services to the school whilst the investigation is ongoing.
The incident comes as students of the college write their end of semester examinations. Venerable Dr. Kranche announced counseling sessions for affected students and asked for public support.
We have the counseling unit. So we have engaged our gender session. We are engaging our dean of students, and we are engaging our psychologists and counseling team on campus to offer counseling service to the students, who, especially those who were involved.
Meanwhile, some residents at Mampong are outraged over the incident. Whilst condemning the act, some called for disciplinary action against the Reverend Minister.
It's a disgrace to those Reverend Fathers outside, because this man have disgraced all of them. It's not good for you to be kissing students. And when it comes to the student side, when they go outside, people will not respect them.
The video in the Ankoye, but see, I was a Mubisa school authorities, you know. Because I don't know, Osha video Nakasa, I did a taxi.
I will be a ne basa bian, who sa video no. The Yambashino, Ebehano, say, Sofona Yene Basa, not just a watch and a bano, Achaboni, into the Sofona and enjoy.
Oh, and you cry. We say, Nipam say, don't mean that we are a braba. I won't no smart to has of Ukisiki students. No, say, you are really by an intina, say, kiss dear, and you quite say, and I soften us 1 year. Oh, 1 year.
I say, and your man kui. Sad time, yeah, you womb or COVID time. Yeah, or my penisi in I am more home. Even at all, say social distance, entity and terminal. And you can say kutu, sir.
From Asante Mampong for Joy News, I'm Interior reporting.
Forcing someone to have sex or do something, putting pressure on someone to have sex with the person or something. And if the person doesn't understand or something and you force the person, that's a place it can lead to arrest and stuff.
If someone involved in that particular act, the person should be punished or something like that. That's all I can even say, because it's not a good attitude.
If you want to have sex with him, well, me too, I am not in the mood, you can forget it, because you can't force me. The same thing, me too, if you're not in the mood, I forget it. There's no way to force him.
Me say like Uma obi kwan se onye osade no oye. Na last time bi na me nam road no so. And I guys be omo ye 3 and a baba aku. Nam sa no ba aku no bo meto. And I'm say brother na bo meto sa wonim na bo meto. Me kan sa no brother no bufu ye afi do say o de me be ko na so ntumi fa me nko. Me na mo wonim na wa bo meto. Me wonam na wen baby ambo se meto na obobo. And omo start say omo nim be allegation na me say sa dia me by allegation.
You're welcome back. Well, as I intimated to you earlier, we're using this as a springboard to get to identify what the forms of sexual harassment are. What is it that constitutes sexual harassment? How can you identify them? How do you avoid them? What are the punishments? So here, on your Legal Light and Health Law, as we always do, we will in due course open the lines for you to join us with your questions and your contributions. But we start right from the studio, and we are grateful to have Ifwa Brown Asin, who is the director, FIDA International. She's the president of the Ghana chapter and the director of the international body. Thank you so very much for making the time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Also here with us is Kezia Kenneth Azuma, who is a board member of FIDA. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, sir.
Right. So let's get to the education. When we hear sexual harassment, what is it? And I'll be going through the statement that FIDA issued and the concerns that you had, particularly for the girls who went through this ordeal. So, if I may start with you. First of all, let's take your comments on this issue and then come to the question, what is sexual harassment? Then I want you guys to take your time and help all of us, especially men, to be able to identify the elements that constitute sexual harassment. And also for ladies, particularly girls in schools, to be able to tell that this is sexual harassment, and once they identify them, how do they avoid them? How do they report? How do they even dare to report without the consequences that they always fear? Right.
Thank you. So, with regards to the incidents we would be discussing in depth today, that's the matter that happened at the St. Monica School. I think we're all shocked. I think for me, the biggest shock was that it actually happened during a church service. I mean, we've always heard of sexual harassment in churches, but it's often on our blind side. But to be done openly in public, I thought was quite distasteful. But for someone recording it, this wouldn't have come out. And the way they were so comfortable with him, jeering and very happy about what was going on there, suggests that it's a regular occurrence. So it shows that they didn't even know what was going on, possibly. And I can understand them to a large extent. You know, secondary school, boarding house, very boring. You want some entertainment, so once there's something, you take it as entertainment. But the reality is, these girls' lives are being violated right before our eyes, and they don't possibly even know that it's happening. And what we've realized from the Me Too movement suggests that most people don't even know when it's happening, or do not even have the courage to deal with it when it's happening. So later they understand the damage done to them, and that's when they gather the courage. So if we see the girls, someone was telling me, oh, the girls are quite old, they're above 18, they didn't seem to be pushing him away, so there was consent. I beg to differ. We are in a society where people defer to spiritual authority and academic authority. And I don't see any way the girls would have pushed this priest aside. Even if they didn't like it, they would just pretend as if they were okay with it, but would be uncomfortable inside. I've been thinking about it myself. If I was in their shoes when I was in secondary school, what would I have done? possibly done the same thing, just succumbed to it, yet hating myself. So this is a serious issue, and I will just let Kezia also share her views before we go into the law regarding this matter.
In due course, we will certainly look at the question of, you mentioned the question of consent. And my producers just tell me that on the social media page, there seem to be a lot of guys and even some ladies suggesting that, well, this was consent, there was consensual thing, so what's all the hue and cry about? But for me, that highlights the seriousness of the issue, that people don't seem to know exactly what constitutes harassment and indecent assaults, so to speak, and what to happen. So one of the text messages on our social media page, Gideon Sebe, he says, just because of the kiss by the priest, so sexual harassment be what kura, that only woman complain of it. Right. So people make light of what should be a very serious issue. So we'll look at the question of the consent again. And she speaks about the kind of authority, you know, the influence that some certain people wield. And I'm sure once you mentioned that you have heard of sexual harassment in churches, except that this time there's some video of sort. Some people are beginning to sit up that, how does this happen in a church in the first place? Well, Kezia.
I think my first shock and my reaction to the issues is where a question came from the Anglican Church, according to social media. I was following it keenly on a certain platform, where they were asking who videoed it in the first place. And I'm like, wow, you are starting the premise of who videoed it. I think that the other issue that I saw very strange was a reverend minister in the pulpit repeatedly kissing people. I mean, even if there was no COVID, you were transferring diseases right in the pulpit. Forget about consent and all the rest of it. But I'm like, why? And the other people who sat in the congregation were jeering on and shouting. But I don't know about the first two girls, but the third girl I feel so sad for, because she was cringing. In fact, when she came with her mask, the mask was still on. Then she was ordered to remove it. She reluctantly slipped the mask. Then the man held her and she lifted her leg. And I'm like, oh my. I mean, it's so, for some of us who have come to this level, you have family members, you have children, you have nieces, you begin to ask that, is this what's going to happen when you send your child to a church, to a school? But you see, there's a, like my senior has said, there's a power balance. So the children were very confused, even though if they are even more than 18, they were confused as to what to do. And one of the media posts that I found was that it is something that he does. I'm not sure about that one. But whatever it is, it was so wrong for him to call them forward and also suggest in his apology that he was adding a human touch. No, kissing on the lips, it is too far.
For some people, the most important thing is to consider what the church had done. They had issued a first statement to say that they denounced this act. They are going to investigate. And then it appears there was a lot of pressure, of course, including from you guys. Then by afternoon or evening, there was a next statement that had suspended him from all activities, activities as a priest and activities as a lawyer in the school and all of that. Some say you should look at these two and then his apology. Irrespective of anything else you see in his apology, you should see the conclusion where he says, I'm sorry.
Can I? Okay, so for the apology, okay, so let's talk about the Anglican Church first. I think they showed a lot of leadership in this matter, in coming out boldly to condemn the act, to suspend, relieve him of his duties, to even offer counseling to the girls. So that suggests that they know that the girls had been violated and they needed that support. And for the apology, I think it would have been best to just say sorry and to just leave it at that than to give us the reasons why he did what he did. For me, I was scandalized. To actually say that you were given a human touch and you were appreciating the students, and to think that it came from a lawyer, that was quite strange for me. Another statement or phrase I noticed in the statement was that he had not been mindful of his behavior. He didn't say acts.
So he didn't think through it.
Through his behavior. He didn't say, I didn't think through this act. So it suggests that he knows that he has a behavior of doing wrong things, in quotes. So if it's a behavior issue, then it's a serious issue, and it's right the Anglican Church has relieved him of his position. He says we should pray for him. That we would leave the church to pray for him. But I think it's also important that other churches take a cue from this, because recently there have been a lot of reports and allegations.
You mean the churches should take a cue from the
Anglican Church?
Anglican churches
approach to handling this matter, because most often we hear that things are covered. As soon as some allegations are made, the church will try to cover it, and it's never really addressed.
Right.
I mean, for the past few years, we've heard a few things on air, and we've not seen any church come out boldly, except maybe for the Vatican, where from time to time we hear them relieving priests or priests going through prosecution and being jailed and stuff like that. We don't see most of the charismatic churches dealing with this issue. And sometimes it looks like we hear a bit more from that quarters. So I hope that we all take a cue from this.
I doubt in the charismatic church this may come out if it happens there, because of the structure in most of these churches. Because often the order is one man in charge of everything, and everybody else, is down there. But a church like the Anglican Church, the structure of leadership, there's some, respectful, organized, laid down process. And you just mentioned the Catholic Church, clearly very methodical in their approach to things. So what do you say? Because in reading your statement, of course, she signed the statement. In reading your statement, I find that you say, for example, that you are appealing to the media and all persons who may want to be dealing with this matter to be circumspect in sharing the video, to protect the identity of the girls as they are victims. You say the initial approach, focusing on who shared the video, was your concern.
Yes.
But you were disgusted at that approach. But in your statement, your emphasis is that the best thing is don't expose these girls because they are victims. What do you say?
So because I signed, let me
All right.
so that she answer. So I'm in no way saying that the video shouldn't be shared. I'm talking about the identity of the girls. It could easily have been shared without showing the faces of the girls. And I don't know the ages, especially if they are minors. We have a right to protect their identity according to the Children's Act. And that is why the statement was made. So over to you, Kezia.
Yeah, even though we applaud, for me, we applaud the person who captured the event. But we are not happy that the identities of the ladies are out there and keeps circulating. Because even under the DV Act,
if the Domestic Violence Act.
If the girls are more than 18, it means that they come directly under the DV Act. Their identities must be protected because they are victims. And as you can see, they didn't consent to the kissing. So if they didn't consent to the kissing,
Is it one of them who exactly didn't consent, or all of them?
Well,
because if you, like you mentioned earlier, the last lady appears to be saying, I don't want to do this.
At all.
And grudgingly appears to give her cheek.
Yes.
You know, and then subsequently
was forced.
You know.
So for the third girl, if you just look at the video, you can even say that she was highly harassed. The other girls may have cowered because of the jeering of the people, because of where they were.
What you refer to as the power imbalance, or?
No, the power has to do with the priest. You see, first, I think they were afraid that the issues are the power of the priest, then the jeering of the people. So we suspect that the first two were very highly influenced by the power of the priest, the power imbalance, plus what the onlookers would say and what they were saying.
Okay.
But the last one got extremely overpowered. And I think if there's anybody who has suffered extreme trauma out of the events, it is the last one who will have more, if the psychologists will tell us what the analysis of the ladies are. So what our statement is saying is that we want to highlight what is happening in the society, but then hide the identities of the victims.
Okay. All right.
Because some people too, you see what is happening even on your show, they are saying this more kissing, what? Some people are making light of the kissing, but if I don't want to be kissed, you don't have to kiss me.
I think it goes beyond that. I think there was no consent for any of the girls, any of them. Clearly, they were on stage for a particular reason. They were not informed that they were going to be kissed. It was clear ambush.
Yes.
And if we even look at the law of indecent assault, which I am more inclined towards in this matter, the issue of consent comes in. But I think there's an issue of undue influence, which will set aside consent if there is any thinking in that direction.
There's no consent.
There was definitely no consent, not for girl 1, not for girl 2, not for girl 3. So I think we should come out clearly to say that maybe the last one was maybe the one and the 2. No, they all didn't consent. They were not there to be kissed.
All right.
That wasn't the arrangement. If they went there to be kissed, so that is where the consent comes in.
Now you are going to the legal angle. Let's get there. There are others who have expressed their disgust and outrage, and perhaps they don't even know about what the law says about it, but their disgust is about the fact that we are in COVID. And to kiss 1, 2, 3, even in the absence of COVID, it's unthinkable to do. And I think they admit that. He admits that in his apology letter. You just went to the legal aspect, so let's go there. You say indecent assault. Now the law says indecent assault, a person who indecently assaults another person commits a misdemeanor and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 6 months. A person commits the offense of indecent assault if, without the consent of the other person, that person forcibly makes any sexual bodily contact with the other person or sexually violates the body of the other person in any manner not amounting to carnal knowledge or unnatural carnal knowledge. So where there's no sex, but there is an act which is sexual in nature that I disapprove of. And because of that, I didn't consent. Okay.
Yeah.
So unwanted touch, unwanted commentary, even about how a person looks, how they have dressed, their body parts, all of that is indecent assault. If they do not consent to it, it is an assault on them. If they feel uncomfortable with what you are doing, if it affects them emotionally, it is harassment. And I mean, it falls under the indecent assault.
So this clearly is now bringing us into the picture of what is sexual harassment. How can I identify it? So I think she's mentioning some. If you can continue and help all of us to get the education.
Okay, so you mentioned COVID. So before I get into indecent assault, you know there are also penalties for breaching the COVID protocols. So apart from what we are talking about, he clearly breached the not wearing of mask, actually encouraging people to remove their... Oh, it's true. I mean, that's the law.
Yes.
I mean, we are in court right now in similar cases, so I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would also want to see some prosecution in that direction. Not following the protocols. I think it's the social distancing.
Removing the
was
mask.
so close. So
and ordering the removal of masks.
Exactly.
Helping the girls to violate the law.
So the EI on the COVID is also one aspect of this matter. Then back to the criminal code. For indecent assault, you know, it talks about the bodily contact.
The EI on the COVID protocols is that when you violate the protocols, you are liable to pay 6,000 to 12,000
fines.
In fines, and then you could go to jail for between 5 to 10 years. Yes, I think my memory serves me right. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a lot.
Yes, between 6 to 12,000 or 5 to 10 years. It's a very harsh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, please go on.
Yes, so for the indecent assault, it deals with the bodily contact, which is sexual in nature, but doesn't include the sexual act, as we all know. So clearly, kissing is sexual in nature.
Okay.
And there was definitely bodily contact.
It says forcibly makes any sexual bodily contact.
Yes. So
or sexually violates the body of the person.
So for me, the two applies here. There's been a violation, clearly, and there's been a forceful bodily contact. They will say, oh, we didn't force. You see, the girls were coming close to him. But it's the intent. We all know about intent in the criminal acts. So it need not be so physically shown that you are dragging the person. But clearly he forced them because they were not there to be kissed. They were there. He claimed that they were. Oh, the power
is the issue.
No, because for indecent assault, it's not so much talking about the power now. We'll get to the power play when we get to the sexual harassment.
Okay.
Yes. But for this one, I think it falls on all fours on indecent assault. There was no consent. There was bodily contact. And whatever he did was sexual in nature. And he could be easily found liable or guilty. Anyways, innocent of proving guilty. So he could easily be prosecuted under this provision.
Okay.
Then for the sexual harassment, it's quite different. It doesn't need to be to have the bodily contact, although it includes that.
The Labour Act defines sexual harassment as any unwelcome, offensive, or importunate sexual advances or requests made by an employer or superior officer or a co-worker to a worker, whether the worker is a man or a woman.
Okay, so for this one, it deals with the office setting or a work setting, and it talks about the act between workers. So I'm wondering if it would really apply to the girls here. But the Domestic Violence Act, 2007, Act 732, on the interpretation page at page 18, it defines harassment. It says harassment means sexual contacts without the consent of the person with whom the contact is made, repeatedly making unwanted sexual advances, repeatedly following, pursuing, or accosting a person, or making persistent, unwelcome communication with the person, and includes A, watching, loitering outside or near a building where the harassed person resides, works, carries on business, studies, or happens to be. B, repeatedly making telephone calls or inducing a third person to make telephone calls to the harassed person, whether or not conversations ensues. C, repeatedly sending, delivering, or causing the delivery of letters, telegrams, packages, facsimiles, electronic mail or other objects or messages to the harassed person's residence, school, or workplace, or engaging in any other menacing behavior. So this is quite broad. However, we know that this is within the domestic setting, but you can see that it's been broadened here. You know, I think that was, where did I see the workplace? You see school, workplace, residence, but obviously in the St. Monica setting, it looks, it has the communal setting.
That's where they live.
That's
where they work.
live.
That's where they
So
study.
I believe this would fit. However, the repeatedly is an issue for me because I don't think sexual harassment should be a repeated thing. I think one time can even be more damaging in some situations. So that's the only issue I have with this.
Okay.
So generally,
you are still here on the law. This is your legal light and your help law. We are looking at the matter of sexual harassment, assisting you to understand what constitutes sexual harassment, how to identify it, avoid it, and for those who will not want to avoid it, the punishment that you face if you are caught in the circumstance. Now, if we just read to us what the Domestic Violence Act defines to be harassment, and it's so broad, appears to catch you everywhere. Before I come to you, I want us to go back to that. Keep that in your mind when we come to open the lines for you to join us. It says harassment means sexual contact without the consent of the person with whom the contact is made, repeatedly making unwanted sexual advances, repeatedly following, pursuing, or accosting a person or making persistent, unwelcome communication with a person. And this could include watching that person, loitering outside or near a building where the harassed person resides, where the person works, carries on business, studies in the school environment. You're running around and you think it's just about what you say, chasing a girl. Studies, or happens to be repeatedly making telephone calls. The girl says he doesn't want the calls. You're continuing making the telephone calls. Or including a third person, inducing a third person to make telephone calls. So if you use what you say, betweener, you are still caught. To make telephone calls to the harassed person, whether or not conversation ensues. So just by making the call, it doesn't matter that there was no conversation. And repeatedly sending, the WhatsApp messages, delivering or causing the delivery of letters, telegrams, packages, electronic mail, or other objects of messages to the harassed person's residence, school, or workplaces. You are sending those flowers. They say they don't want it. You keep repeating and sending them there. The law catches you, and engaging in any other menacing behavior. Oh, that's a lot. It's like it's unavoidable.
Yes.
It's avoidable.
Okay, so continue to help us to identify what is done that constitutes sexual harassment, and then we'll talk about how to avoid it and the punishments. Already we have spoken about one of the punishments in respect of what? Indecent assault.
Okay, I want us to go to some of the things that have been identified as sexual harassment under the UN conventions, ILO 190, which is yet to be ratified by Ghana. So it says in that document that, for example, if you walk around invading the privacy of the person, you are making suggestions to her, demanding dates, propositioning
Him or her.
Yes, him or her.
Because girls can also harass guys.
Excellent. Propositioning sexual intimacy, threatening them, suggesting things about their body, and then bragging about your sexual prowess, talking about their mannerism, using derogatory language on them, talking down on people. Unnecessary physical contact. The person doesn't want a hug, you went to hug them. Invading their privacy, they're in their room. They say, don't come there, you have come. Or this kind of invading the privacy of the mouth of the girls. And then demanding hugs, soliciting sexual favors, all kinds of things.
Sometimes demanding what? Hugs or hands?
Hugs.
Hugs, okay.
Hugs, demanding hugs, and welcome propositions, unwarranted physical contact. Even if you want to shake her hand and she says no, and you insist, it is harassment. So, I mean, the current documentations and positioning of the UN on this matter is very serious because of the cost of harassment to the well-being of the harassed and the economy of the person. For example, the UN in the document finds that the person who is in a harassed environment is not able to perform creditably to the organization because of the harassment. So it is a very wide and grave matter. It's not a laughing or joking matter.
Yeah, and I recall that as you were reading the items, it even went to comments.
Yes.
So what sort of comments? I'm a lady. I want to identify what sort of comments will a guy make to me or somebody make to me that I would identify this as harassment.
Oh, I like your lips. And if you don't like that comment coming from him, it is harassment.
Okay.
I like your hairstyle. According to that particular document, if you work with somebody or like in a school situation, what the priest should have said was that, well done for the good work done. Maybe the highest he could have gone was to shake their hands and let them go down. You see, that's all. But not to say that I like your structure, your body structure, your what's the name? Your complexion. Right. I like your hairdo. Your eyebrow is beautiful. All of that is harassment in that particular context.
In the workplace, people say, especially men, say far more than that. I'm sure you are being hesitant in talking about them, that men say far more than that in the workplace to women. Yes. You know, particularly women that are said to be sort of endowed.
Yes.
They say far more. So you're saying that once the person says, I don't like this, then you have been warned.
Yes.
If you repeat it,
it is harassment.
Then it's harassment.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the person reports you, you will be in trouble. And so what we would be advocating for is that every organization should have a policy on harassment and sexual harassment at that. So that we all know what is in the policy. We all follow. In fact, if you want to chase a girl, chase her after the office hours. Because under those conventions that will be ratified very soon by Ghana, you would not go to chase her in the office setting or like in the school setting. When you do that there, the person reports you, you will be caught under the law. But if you do that and they don't report you, then that's a different matter.
But when you come to use the most comprehensive way that catches the domestic violence one, it's supposed to be a domestic situation, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm looking at the law's definition of what the domestic relationship is. And it says that a domestic relationship means a family relationship, a relationship akin to a family relationship, or a relationship in a domestic situation. Then it comes to explain, it could be in a marriage situation, it could also be a situation where there is no marriage, where there is actual or perceived romantic, intimate, or cordial relationship, not necessarily including a sexual relationship with the person. So this is where we'll apply, right? Yes. Where there is a cordial relationship, not necessarily a sexual one with the other person.
Yes.
So that's serious.
Yeah, so to add on, we are not saying that giving compliments is harassment. I think that's
it's a fine line.
Should come out clearly, because everybody would like to be complimented, both males and females. But the harassment is when it's unwanted. and when it is supposed to sometimes demean. You know, so as you said, you know, sometimes the body parts are used or mentioned over and over. You just get tired of hearing it. For the domestic violence, it looks like it's just in the domestic setting and with regards to the relationships you've just mentioned. For the Labor Act, it also refers to the office setting. So it looks like both ways there is some protection under the law. However, in the Labor Act, it doesn't seem like it's a criminal act. It just says it's prohibited.
Right.
It doesn't show the penalties. It doesn't indicate the penalties for
so the employer will take a disciplinary action.
Exactly, that's all. But for this one, it's a misdemeanor, just like the indecent assault. But it would also interest you to know that
the indecent assault, you are likely to go to jail for 6 months. But here, in the Domestic Violence Act, it calls it a misdemeanor, properly so called, and it doesn't say the specific. So which means you are looking to up to 3 years in jail.
Yes. The higher sentence can be applied under the Domestic Violence Act, depending on the discretions of the judge and the gravity and how damaging your action has been to the victim.
And even if we're having a debate over whether the relationship is a domestic one or not, the law says it could be one that the relationship is one determined by the court to be a domestic relationship.
Exactly. And I think in this school, it looks, I mean, the domestic features are evident.
Okay.
But one issue I chanced on, not issue, the DOFSU statistics on gender-based violence. I couldn't get the 2020, but from 2017 to 2019, I realized that there were reports by both males and females with regards to sexual harassment.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's not just a woman's problem. I think 2019 there was 28 by females, 6 by males. I mean, it's like an average of 30 in a year, but definitely between 4 to 6 men report in each year. And we all know that most men would generally not report these matters. So maybe this would have been maybe extreme in quotes. So what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't just affect women. These are the men who were more courageous to take the step to report it. And I can really say that there would be more men who find themselves in that situation, just as there would be more women, because I saw a report that was referring to a survey done that there were about 68% of women who complained to be harassed in schools and churches. So you can see that those figures are high. Then there was another survey done in the medical schools, and it said about 25% of girls had complained of being sexually harassed. Medical schools throughout Ghana. So it's an issue so I think the DOFSU statistics is not a good reflection of some of the surveys done, because although it happens, most people won't report.
And you say that the underlying thing is that it is unwanted. Anything you are doing to the other party, once it is unwanted, if it's about the comment, if it's about the touching them wrongly in the manner that they don't like, once they don't like it, then you are getting into sexual harassment. If it's at the workplace, the labor law provides for, as it were, prohibits it, and so the employer will have code, they will have rules that will sanction you for it. But beyond that, it could go into a crime. Looking at the Domestic Violence Act and looking at Section 103 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act in respect of indecent assault. You want to avoid it so that you don't have to go to jail for simply making a comment about someone's body in a manner they don't want, or touching them, or violating them sexually in one way or the other. Now, we invite you to join us, ask your questions of our panelists, and also if you have some contribution, let's hear them very quickly. Bibi, you are calling from OT. Let's hear you, Bibi.
Yes, please. I want to find out if there is a contact, that is a telephone number, so that we will teach our children when they go through this harassment.
All right, thank you very much, Bibi. Bibi wants a phone number, perhaps from FIDA, to help them so that they can make reports. Yes?
Okay, so the hotline that you can report these matters to at FIDA are 0554 121 205. 0554 121 205.
All right. So please keep that number in mind, 0554 12 12 05. That's a FIDA hotline to assist people who need assistance. Thomas, you are calling from where? What's your question?
Good afternoon, Mr. Sampson.
Afternoon, let's hear you.
Yeah, Omar, Babamanacha calling from West Region.
Thomas, let's hear you.
Yes. The issue about pastor kissing those innocent girls is actually an unfortunate one. It may be condemnable, but we have to sympathize the situation. My thinking is that if the pastor meant evil, he would have done that in secrecy and not in open public.
Okay, so your view is shared by some of the messages we said we have received on our social media lines. Who else is next? Hello, yes, Zoom. Is
Hello.
Revivalist your name? Hello, Tete, let's hear you.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, what I want to suggest is that, you see, our ladies who are trying to teach us on the program, the lawyers, about the women. When we were in school, a lot of people have harassed us when we were in school, right from the.
Your line is very terrible. Hello, Seth, let's hear you.
And what they ask me,
hello, Seth, let's hear you, Seth. Unmute. You are muted. Unmute.
Good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead, Seth.
Yes, please. This is a very unfortunate situation. But listening to your guest in the studio, one of the guests kept saying that they were not there to be kissed. They were not there to be kissed. Well, maybe she has information that some of us do not have.
Were they there to be kissed? Were they there to be kissed?
Something I cannot say for a fact.
Do they go to school to be kissed? Do you send your child to school to be kissed?
So I think that's where the issue of consent should be investigated.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's get to the last person I see on Zoom. Hello, Viva, you're on phone.
Hi, Samson, hi.
Hi.
I think looking at the issue, the women have been talking, we have been condemning. But have we looked at the issue of parenting? Because these are adults. And I believe that in bringing your girl child up as a parent, you should be able to educate her in such a way that whatever she doesn't like, you should be able to simply say no.
All right.
You understand?
Thank you very much, Viva.
How powerful the
Thank you very much, Viva. We had one more person on Zoom. We'll take that person and then come to the studio to conclude. No, the gentleman in blue, he was here. He was on the line for a long time.
Samson, good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead.
My question, is there any defense available for the priest?
Defense?
Very well.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe the defense would be that there was consent. Okay, now let's hear you. You've heard a number of issues. What would you have to say?
I'll deal with the defense.
Okay.
I don't think there's any defense because he's come out to state clearly in his letter that he apologizes for his wrong behavior, that he was just trying to give a human touch. That is his explanation for this. So there's no defense whatsoever. He didn't say that, oh, this is the girls consented. That's why I said I found it really strange coming from a lawyer.
Since we are looking at it in the general sense and
Yes.
educating people,
Okay, beyond the letter.
what could be some defense, if there is any?
Oh, consent would definitely
That the person
be
consented, so there's no
consent.
harassment.
Yes, once there's consent, once there's consent, there's
In the first place, you have explained that once the thing is not unwanted, then there's no harassment.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes. Otherwise,
Alright.
nobody can marry or have a relationship with the opposite sex.
Okay.
So I think that's what we would want people to know, that we are not saying that every relationship could be possibly a sexual harassment situation. No.
When the person says this, you must respect that.
And it applies to both males and females. I think that's the most important thing, because sometimes when people think it's against females, the men are more defensive towards it.
Kezia kept talking about the power imbalance. In a situation where it's a church, I'm looking at my bishop, a young girl or a boy. You know, boys have been defiled.
Yes, sodomized.
I'm looking in the school, I'm looking at my headmaster, my teacher. How do I even dare think about going to report?
I think that the first thing that every organization must begin to do is to have a policy on harassment, and particularly sexual harassment, and pass down that policy along the chain of the organization. Train psychologists to be part of your staff, so that when these things happen, the person knows that I can report to Madam A and Madam B, and the matter will not become public. It will be dealt with appropriately. I will not be told that what were you doing in the man's office and all those kind of things, or what were you doing in the lady's house and those kind of things. So if we are able to have those kind of policies in all institutions, in all organizations, wherever we find ourselves, even national level, to district, to regional, to wherever, we would be able to curb this situation. I like the woman who said that we should train our daughters. I agree also that for every family, we must come up with telling our children that their bodies belong to them and nobody must touch their private parts. That one is so important. We must tell our children that their mouth belongs to them, their eyes belong to them, their other private parts belong to them. Anybody who touches it without their permission, they must come and report to you or report to their daddy.
No, once you said children, there shouldn't be a question of consent. There shouldn't be a question of permission.
Absolutely.
That should not happen at all.
Yes.
But for the adults, that's where the question of permission is.
Yes. But the adults, when we have policies, and we know that if my headmaster does this, there is Madam B who is a specialist in that area, I can go and tell her, and she will not blame me or call me names.
Don't you think, that it is the fear of what may come upon me if I report that doesn't get these things reported?
Yes, indeed. There are surveys that have been done in the US that showed that there were similar policies, and there were still reports of gender-based violence or sexual harassment, because after they were told, they were victimized.
All right, I'm told that we have run out of time. Thank you so very much. Kezia Kenneth Azuma is board member of FIDA, and Ifwa Brown Asin is director, FIDA International, and also president of the chapter here in Ghana. The hotlines, as they announced, are 055 4121205. This has been The Law. It's your legal light. It's your health law. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. We'll come your way next week with another edition. Have a good afternoon.